Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. For the leverage story, case's interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 70 years ago. That were evil, or I had something to do with it. There was a whale, but Truth Town was without compare. So you threatened to go to press with this story? That's how you got your interview? Blackmail? Well, yes. I mean, no! It wasn't exactly black. I mean, I'm not. Something wrong, Mr. Brussel? Look! This is my story! My tidbit! Journalist's info is livelihood! End quote! I see. Well, you have been happening away in here. What's going on out there? Well, somehow you are to it. There's Alice Cooper, that's one of my story. You'll be going to press. Well, I'm going to waste. The court feels your pain, Mr. Brussel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. Have to get info on that. Our chances of breaking Swill aren't looking good. On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other, this letter. What makes you think the two are related? Oh, I would say it's possible. Reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You're going to pick all of them apart? Be my guest. I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Masham? Just how amazing was Mr. Masham's talent? Wooey boy! I mean, hey, he's a star, man! A star! The flow of his brush is like a great undulating river across the canvas. Artist paint that up, studio like sun! End quote. This guy's full of wacky gestures. That one just now was wackier than usual. It's kind of nervous to me, Apollo. Definitely. I'm sensing something different than before here. Maybe it's time to bring out you-know-what. That testimony left a bad taste in my mouth. All makes sense. Nothing jumps out as ridiculous. I don't know what the story he's talking about is. Must have been good. Get an interview with a famous recluse like that. Something powerful enough to drag Drew Masham out of hiding. I wonder. Maybe that had something to do with Mr. Masham's art? Yeah, I think I know what's going on here. Maybe I'm on the wrong track. Hmm. I can't fucking see anything. The hell am I looking for here exactly? I can't find anything. I don't get it. What exactly am I supposed to be looking for? Shit, man, he's so hard. Why don't I take a wild guess? Mr. Brushel, you're hiding something. Don't give a guy a heart attack. Yeah, sorry, it's just the way you were moving just now. It was particularly suspicious. What's that supposed to mean? So usually I'm just sort of averagely suspicious? Sorry, my mistake, you're fine. Alright, I give up. Tell me, Mr. Walkthrough Man, what am I supposed to do? For his right armpit! What? Sweat much, Mr. Brushel? Well, a man can help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, he suddenly began to sweat buckets. Ah, you're hiding something about his talent. What? Ridiculous! Evidence time. Let's show Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Bam! This is the correct one, right? This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. Second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. Ugh! That is all, Your Honor. Everyone, please, everyone! You keep this private, please? It's my story, my scoop. Forgery? That's a serious crime. Drew Misham is known as artist these days. But there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art meaning forgery. Drew Misham was talented, alright. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about... Exactly! I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumor started circulating 7 years ago. This is 7 years ago? So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for... Exactly. Forged evidence that slightly profit, end quote. Order, order, order! Why, it's like our victim was living a double life! Ha, this is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? We could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here. But there's no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remained simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course. Hey! Oh, the only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews. Mr. Brushel, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen. What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. You know, it's so solid you could start an elephant on it. End quote. In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over. Hello, what's he talking about? Cross-examination showed Mr. Brushel didn't have a reason or means to poison him. As long as there are no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera. That's what. This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched the loose lips during the interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. A nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Aw, shucks. You really think so? I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination. Right. Still have one trump card left to play, and won't let this trial end until I use it. What is my final trump card? That doesn't prove Vera poisoned it. What? Let me try. Why not? Excellent. Let's see your proof then. Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug? Must I explain this over and over and over? We don't need possibilities here, her forehead. We need proof. I know that. You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you're a bit early. I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. First things first, I'd better uncover a spot before I try to strike again. Alright. Not yet. Aha! The yellow envelope. Was it? This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Oh! That very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared. Ah yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really that important? That this envelope the witness says I saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then, the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to charge anything, her forehead. Don't be so sure. The letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. It's exactly the opening I've been looking for. Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you're hiding that fact from us. Yes, well actually. Couldn't argue the possibility that a letter disappeared from that studio. But her forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right, how Mr. Misham was poisoned, I know, but Mr. Murchel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. What he's told us means something entirely different now. I'm starting to think. Let's keep thinking, Apollo. What do you think, Apollo? Think he's saying so not flawed? Well, that's kind of what you want from the testimony, really. Let me keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Misham killed? There poured a coffee, that's not going to change. But if that coffee didn't kill him, we need to find what did, and prove it. Say clearly as though it was obvious. Just claim that the dependent poison the victim is merely conjecture. Oh yes, well you see, my business, it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. A bad habit, I know. Yes, well, actually, I guess this is more of a case of ridiculous journey sounds wrong. End quote. The court is forced to agree with you. Please refrain from wild conjecture. Understood clear. Only I can believe that. You do understand what we need, Ja? Proof, her forehead, not possibilities. I approve of the disappearing envelope. I thought I'm writing that letter, I did! Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course, which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? We all know stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. Heh, none worth talking to actually lick stamps in this day and age. Even if you want to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so he left the stamp, but wait. How does that explain the atrocanine on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of a poison stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing, it was the other way around! What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself! Order! Order! But that doesn't, does it? Recall if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips on that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Bushel? Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent. I believe I mentioned earlier. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just ran out. Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one. Oh, but there is. What if I told you? That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. If providing the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proved the existence of this poison stamp? Oh wait, now is finally the time for me to do the thing. Well, that certainly is a cute little frame, and by little I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain is on the inside of the frame. Atraquinine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You aren't saying. Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order! Order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible. But Prosecutor Gavin, why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see. What, Mr. Brushel, and please stop jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money on that line of the work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too. End quote. The poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. Oh, Rich, that's Rich. Leave your ridiculous flight of fancy to the Gaviner's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder's a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Mishem hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail! Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters, that would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. There's evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence per se. Things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. Why are they... There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. Oh! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison, on the stamp, lick, lick, gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it on the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letter box. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have, Her Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, ja? Is that what you'd have us believe, really? Well, It is a little bit of a stretch, but there is a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope. A stamp then became the murder weapon. How do you intend to prove the seeming coincidence? Well... it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see, very well. I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fräulein, Clavier. Bruh. Elma! Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Oh, quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fräulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you all out of this mess you're making of this case. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope. Easy! Care to explain yourself, Fräulein Detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's on the residue, right? That's right! The poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it in the authority of the court. Booyah! Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's atroconine residue. I don't believe it! A murder weapon from the past! Now 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last! Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a heartache. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Mesham figured it out. Figured what out? He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame? Ah, you're still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Racer Dude Brazil, think the scoop is mine. Drew Mission killed in cold blood. I sent her a 7-year-old letter. End quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay. End quote. Order! Order! I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit, this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife. End quote. Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly be in our defendant. Apollo! I think we just won. Very well, this court finds a defendant. No, we already proved it couldn't have been her. Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago. Tickets for governor's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in her forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? Emma explained that he must have realized it was poisoned. But he did it anyway. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sent a trap and put the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this. But this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot. You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? While I admit, this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo? I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Okay then, how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing ever existed. What else could I ask you, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be atrocanine residue. But her forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. I believe we've come to a conclusion, again. Apollo, were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up, it can't be a coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue, sometime this year, Mr. Justice. Yes, Your Honor. Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received the red envelope. There were traces of the poison, atrocanine, on the envelope inside that document envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope, and an envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poisoned stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poisoned stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right. Which means there's a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. Traces of atrocanine. The envelope is the frame. And Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of this evidence makes no sense. Which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, fake clue. Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, Ja. Fake clue that's thrown us off the poison trail is none other than... Shit! Can't have been the envelope, it can't have been the frame. Drew! The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. Me neither. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug. Linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations. You've completely lost me. The fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger. It makes a good story, I'll give you that. Ah. Ha? Teka. Ay, hindi pa. Fake clue, fakes, forgeries. It's finally time to show off. Ah! I know that face, that's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again? 7 years ago, our forger snipped the trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again, the victim was a fake. One forger smelled the trap, one forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers and one of them was fake. So you are telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake, and there's another Drew Misham. Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You'd better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was. Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was... Spark? Nah. It's obvious. There can only be one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Verum Visham. Order! Order! Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb, even for you. I kinda agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Just consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in the trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually, that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. We know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger. That leaves only one possibility, by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well... fascinating. Vera Misham? You've been paying attention to the trial so far? Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger? Drew Misham. Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Fräuleins, believe me. Though they usually talk to me too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? What if she just writes a big no? Fuck. Yes. So the forger Drew Misham was you? Yes, it was me. What? What? The court was in an uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess.